Hey, Mortal Wound here. Last week I made a short about Frank Horrigan and joked that he would destroy a space marine.
Who would most definitely destroy a space marine in a fight.
Let's just say I got quite a lot of passionate comments on the matter.
Marines eat mutants like him for breakfast.
Frank would have a hard time with a space marine and always
tattoo.
And after responding to the comments, I think it's time to finally end this discussion.
About whether or not Frank Horrigan from Fallout 2 could be a space marine in a 1 versus 1. First into the ring is...
But then you haven't met Frank Horrigan either.
Before I get to the stats, how about a quick lore recap? Frank Horrigan was a bulky dude when he was a human. But after a certain incident involving the president, he was put on wasteland duty and, well, fate would have it, Frank would get infected with the FEV, turning him into a super mutant. Poor Frank was brought back to an Enclave lab and experimented upon, and he was very violent and aggressive during these tests. I mean, who can blame the guy? The Enclave scientists then had the bright idea to equip him with a suit of power armor. And by equip, I mean they took parts from other power armors to build Frank's armor around him. He was also equipped with a prototype plasma gun and a composite blade. Alright, lore covered, now for the stats. In Fallout 2, Frank has a 10 in every single special stat, meaning a 10 in strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck. He's over 12 feet tall, weighs 2 tons. He tore apart a Deathclaw with his bare hands, which, by the way, Deathclaws basically have bulletproof skin, so that's quite a feat by itself. His power armor is better than that of the regular Enclave soldier. Additionally, Horrigan's armor grants him high resistance against small arms fire, explosions, laser and plasma bolts, but it is vulnerable to electricity. Oh, and for a little seasoning on top of the steak, his armor also pumps him full of tasty drugs, such as Buffout and Psycho. Now, he also has his prototype plasma gun and his arm blade. Fallout plasma guns are about on par with 40K plasma guns, maybe even a tiny bit stronger. And I say this because Fallout plasma guns turn people into literal piles of ash, while the 40K plasma gun melts through people immediately, hence why it's mostly used as anti-armor. Frank's composite blade is also not to be trifled with. It's sharp and is almost as large as a normal person. Next up is the the legendary Space Marine. Quick lore recap.
For the Emperor!
The Space Marines were created by the Emperor of Mankind, and they were his greatest warriors. Unfortunately, an event would happen that was a little unfortunate. Anyways, 10,000 years later and they're still badass. There are tons of chapters of Space Marines that all have their own tactics and weapons and backgrounds. Stats time!
Blood for the Blood God! Blood for the Blood God!
A Space Marine is about 7 to 8 feet tall, weighs about 700 pounds, but they can easily lift over 3 tons over their head and push about 6 tons. They could run 30 to 45 miles per hour. Space Marines can be equipped with a ton of weapons, but the default loadout is usually the bolter and a chainsaw, with a bolt pistol. But they can use a large variety of weapons. This also applies to grenades. They can use crack grenades, melter grenades, frag grenades, etc. A Space Marine ceramite armor is also really durable, capable of shrugging off heavy bolter fire. It also increases a Space Marine's reaction speed, but the armor does have the same weaknesses as medieval armor in the joints and the visor. Well, I think it's time to see who would win in a 1v1. Oh yeah, before I start the rounds, the Space Marine will be of the Ultramarines chapter, the poster boy Marine.
Your ride's over, Mutie. Time to die.
Frank takes this one easily. A Space Marine is strong, don't get me wrong, but Frank has a height advantage and a weight advantage, being a bit harder to knock over. Yes, the Space Marine can lift up to 2 tons and push up to 6 tons, but Frank is just a beast. The buff out and psycho from his armor would turn Frank into a roid-raging maniac. Frank would tear the Astartes limb from limb. Yeah, the Space Marine is pretty cooked on this one.
Your ride's over, Muty. Time to die.
Frank also takes this one, but it could be close. The Space Marine could win if he manages to hit Frank in a weak spot or damages his suit's life support systems. Of course, the Space Marine won't win in a full-on frontal fight with his standard loadout, so he'll have to resort to guerrilla warfare. I just don't see how he would win facing Frank in a fair fight. He'd have to use guerrilla warfare, take cover, and dodge Frank's plasma gun in order to win.
Come, show me what passes for fury among your misbegotten kind!
Now, when the Space Marine starts getting utility and anti-armor capabilities is when Frank loses. Plasma guns can melt through Frank's armor, and crack grenades just evaporate him. Not much to explain here. The technological advantage of the Space Marine shows here.
Come, show me what passes for fury among your misbegotten kind!
Do I even need to explain why a Space Marine with Terminator armor would win? Yeah, nice one. In conclusion, if the Space Marine just runs into Frank Horrigan, Frank will massacre the Space Marine. But being the master tactician that the Space Marine is, he won't show up unprepared. I'm going to give this win to the Space Marine. I hope you enjoyed this versus battle. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more of these. Mortal Wound, out.